Hey everybody, it's Ben, and this is my entry to the Mahoney Show's 100 subscriber contest. First off, Mahoney, congratulations on reaching 100 subscribers. Each and every one of them truly deserved. Always enjoy watching your videos, they're all fantastic, so keep up the great work. To get your name in the hat 5 times, Mahoney posted a question to everybody to either post in the comments or do a video response, and that was what is your favourite comic brand? Now for me, it's DC Comics' Vertigo imprint, because some of these DC Vertigo titles, which I'm going to show you, is actually some of the first comics I ever read when I was about 16 or 17. So I've been reading comics now for, at the end of this year, about 6 years, which is quite surprising to me. But anyway, first up we have a series by one of my favourite comic authors, and that is Garth Ennis's Preacher. Now this series follows the titular character of Jesse Custer, who is a preacher or a reverend from Texas. And we also follow two other main characters, Tulip O'Hare, who is a former lover or former girlfriend of Jesse's, and also a Irish vampire called Cassidy, who Jesse quickly befriends and becomes actually best friends with. Now this series is a gothic western. Now there's a lot of supernatural elements to this. There's angels, demons, heaven, hell. There's some religious undertones, but it's not to the extent where it's preachy. Basically, in the first issue, Jesse is bonded with an angel-demon hybrid called Genesis, and he finds out that basically God within this preachy universe has quit heaven, he's left, and he's in hiding somewhere on earth. So Jesse makes a vow to set out and find God and make him answer for the way the world is within this preachy universe, and it's a very, very bleak and very horrible world within this preachy universe. And we follow our three main characters through a 60-issue run, which is absolutely fantastic, and I cannot recommend Preacher enough. I know myself, James Donnelly, and Civilian Snowman, or Jack Ross, we all really hold this series in high regard, and we each share the series as being our all-time favourite series. But it's not just the main characters that we follow and you become really engrossed and engaged in, but also each of the main secondary characters which Garth Ennis introduces throughout the series, such as the Saint of Killers, who is the patron saint of assassins. You have the character of Arseface, who literally has a face like an arse. He's literally called Arseface. You have some of the bad guys. You have Hair Star. You have this, like I said, it's a gothic western, but there's also a religious apocalypse take over the world plot as well, which is part of the overarching story within the later volumes. Just Preacher is absolutely fantastic, and I cannot recommend it enough. So yeah, that's Garth Ennis' Preacher, which was actually among one of the first comics I ever read. Next up, another comic series that I also was one of the first I ever read, and that is Warren Ellis and Doug Robinson's Transmetropolitan. Now this follows the character of Spider Jerusalem, who is a tough, no-nonsense, always get to the truth no matter what journalist, who is, at this point in the first arc, at the first 6 issues, he's living in seclusion outside of the city, which apparently he hates with a passion, and events unfortunately conspire against Spider, and he's forced to move back into the city, and as a side effect he assumes his old job being a journalist for The Word, which is a news column through which is updated on a daily basis via internet servers, and anything basically computerized. You can get articles written from journalists of The Word. This is a cyberpunk series, so it's a near future with a ton of science fiction elements. There's some really black, dark humor which Warren Ellis throws in this series, which I really, really enjoy. And yeah, I really enjoy just a really dark sense of humor which this series has. There's also there's political corruption. There's also This is just a fantastic series. I'm not really sure how to describe it actually. It's a cyberpunk journalistic series, in other words. So that's Warren Ellis and Doug Robinson's Transmetropolitan. I should say that Vertigo is a company or an imprint of DC that I tend to gravitate towards because their series are mainly targeted towards more mature or adult readers, and I seem to gravitate more towards them because they seem to be more up my reading alley, so to speak. Not that I don't enjoy, Marvel and DC and a ton of the independents like Image, Dynamite, Dark Horse, all those different companies, all those series that I pick up from those companies I really enjoy. But I just seem to have this sort of I just seem to have this connection with Vertigo series that I don't seem to have for the others, which might sound a bit strange, but it makes sense to me anyway. Next up is book 1 of Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing. Now, I read Alan Moore's Watchmen, which was again one of the first comics I ever read. Absolutely fantastic. And then I tried reading V for Vendetta, which for some reason I couldn't get into it. Possibly V for Vendetta is more of a... it's probably a series, if you grew up during the time in which this series is set, you might be able to appreciate it a lot more. But for some reason, I just couldn't seem to get fully on board with the series. But maybe that's just me. But anyway, I got the first 2 trades of Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing on the premise of enjoying the first volume of Scott Snyder's run from the New 52. And also after watching one of Mark MAWWW's 31 Days in August videos, which he did last year. And I put a comment on one of his videos and I said, is Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing run worth getting into? Because during one of these 31 Days in August videos, he basically reviewed the Swamp Thing Annual number 2, which featured guest appearances from the Demon Etrigan, Phantom Stranger, and Deadman, or Boston Brand. And I also watched recently a review of the first 2 trades by formerly Tekan 1991, but he's now changed his name to the Great Southern Trendkill 85, or James, who's one of the members of the YouTube Comic Book Community Facebook page. He's one of the members of the group who did the first review of the first 2 volumes of this series. So I haven't read it as of yet, but I'm really looking forward to diving into the first 2 volumes. Next up, we have a series and a character that got his start in Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing. Specifically, his first appearance was in issue 37, and that is John Constantine. And this is the reprint, or the new edition, of the first volume of the series, which is Original Sins, which is written by Jamie Delano. And you can tell the new editions apart from the others because DC or Vertigo have also started to number the volumes. Now, John Constantine is one of my favourite DC Universe characters because he's a character that is written in such a way that you really shouldn't like him. Which he's a cynical, trenchcoat-clad, chain-smoking magician who's based out of London, England, in the UK, who is literally haunted by the ghosts of his past, which are friends of his that John has either lost over the course of being involved in magic for so many years, or he's literally sacrificed them to save his own skin. But at the same time, the writers of this series write John in such a way which you can't help but really root for the guy, and you want him to win against the generally unpleasant supernatural forces that he comes up against. And he's also just a really endearing and engaging character. And at the same time, like I said, he sounds like a character you really shouldn't like, but at the same time, he's just got this appeal to him as a character that I really, really dig. And like I said, he's one of my favourite characters from the DC Vertigo universe. And what else do I want to say? Yeah, he's just a really, really cool character. I actually really, really like John as a character. He's also he can also perform magic, like I said, and he's also somewhat of a private investigator, if you will. He's not really, but he tends to investigate more of what's going on in this Vertigo universe of Hellblazer. So like I said, there's angels, demons, heaven, hell, magic, and it's just a really dark, grim and gritty series that I really enjoy, and I highly recommend you check out Hellblazer, particularly since, like I said, DC have recently started reprinting the series in new graphic novels or trade paperback form, and they are reprinting the series in numerical and chronological order. This is the first volume of Garth Ennis's run, which is Dangerous Habits, which was the first Hellblazer story I ever read, which collects issues 41 through 46. And this volume, John Constantine is dying of lung cancer. And it's not the magic that he's done for most of his life, it's not the demons that he's got on the wrong side of, it's not the supernatural forces that he comes up against, it's the chain smoking. He's smoked 20 to 30 cigarettes a day since he was 15 or 16. I think one of the archangels basically tells him that in a meeting between the two. And one of the things I really is kind of cool about John Constantine as a character is he also is one of the few characters who actually ages in real time. And in the first volume, Original Sins, with a really cool cover by Jim Lee, by the way, with a typical Constantine thing to do, which is basically sat on a stool smoking a fag and drinking a pint while a demon is on the floor behind him. He actually turns 35 years old in this first arc. So like I said, he ages in real time as the series comes out. And John is basically in Dangerous Habits. He's trying to figure out a way to stop dying. That's a gross oversimplification of the plot, and it's a lot more to it than that. And John, again, gets into more generally unpleasant supernatural trouble. Again, with the big guy in hell, with Lucifer, the first of the fallen, and also with the second and third of the fallen as well. And what he does in this this story arc of Dangerous Habits is either one of the most insane or brilliant plans for curing himself of lung cancer ever. And as I probably didn't mention, but Garth Ennis is actually one of my favourite comics authors, so highly recommend you check out Dangerous Habits. There's a republished new edition of this story arc, and also the last arc of Jamie Delano's run, which tells of John Constantine's origins and backstory of how he got into magic, and we see John growing up, and then goes straight into Garth Ennis's run. Next up, we have another series which was among those that I first read when I first started reading comics, and that is Neil Gaiman's Sandman. Absolutely phenomenal series, highly recommend this. This follows the title character of the Sandman, or Morpheus, or Dream, who's actually the lord of the dreaming, which is basically a kingdom made up of everyone in the world's dreams. And when you go to sleep, this is where your most pleasant dreams or your most horrifying nightmares come from. They're actually minions of Morpheus, or the Sandman. And in this first arc, we see Morpheus, or Dream, is captured by some black magic practitioners who are trying to capture Death, but instead they capture Dream. Now, I read this first volume when I was about 16 or 17, and I enjoyed it so much, I asked my library to order in the subsequent 9 of the 10 volumes of this series. Collects the full 75-issue run, and like I said, it's absolutely phenomenal. This series is definitely my second favourite series of all time, next to Garth Ennis' Preacher, and this is the latest edition, which is the 4th printing of the trade paperbacks. Now, the reason you can tell these apart is they are the recoloured editions, and also the paper stock that they use is a lot more glossy, and it really does a lot more justice to the artwork. So if you're someone who appreciates comic book artwork and you're looking to get into Neil Gaiman's Sandman series, definitely recommend you pick up the recoloured editions, and you can tell them because they have literally the words fully recoloured edition on the bottom of the front cover. So That's Neil Gaiman's Sandman. Next up is another series by another favourite creator of mine, and that is Jason Aaron. And this is Scalp. This is his creator-owned series, which is basically The Sopranos set on an Indian reservation. It's a crime story. It's a revenge tale. It's basically, if you're a fan of the HBO series The Sopranos, which starred the late James Gandolfini, who recently passed away, highly recommend you check out the Sopranos HBO series, or the TV series from HBO. If you're a fan of Jason Aaron, highly recommend you check out Scalped. There's 10 volumes to this, which ran for 60 issues. It took, I think, 7 years to publish the entire series. Jason Aaron is an author you may know from Wolverine and the X-Men and Thor God of Thunder from over at Marvel. So that's Jason Aaron's Scalp series. Next up we have Scott Snyder and Raphael Albuquerque's American Vampire. Now this series follows the two main characters of Skinner Sweet and Pearl Jones. And this first arc we have Skinner Sweet's origin story as told by Stephen King, because this first volume is co-written by Scott Snyder and Stephen King and illustrated by Raphael Albuquerque. Now this series is currently on hiatus, as issue 34 was the last issue before it went on hiatus for a year. So I hope Scott Snyder brings this series back very soon, because it's one of my absolute Vertigo series favourites, from what I'm currently reading anyway, in the graphic novel or the trade form. This first arc we see Skinner Sweet's origin story in the Old West, and we see Pearl's origin story being turned into an American vampire in the early 1920s, as she's an aspiring young actress on not on Broadway but in theatrical plays. Now this series introduces not only a different or a creator-owned world by Scott Snyder of America, but also he introduces a new mythology for vampires. And you meet the European vampires, which are basically your run-of-the-mill vampires with the standard weaknesses such as sunlight, wood, holy water, and the American vampires have none of those weaknesses. And you find out in this first arc what the weakness of the American vampire is. And in the second volume, we move forward in time to the mid-1930s, and you follow some other main characters for this second story arc. You see Skinner Sweet make a reappearance, and also Pearl Jones as well. And Scott Snyder continues to build the world and the mythology of American Vampire, but also introducing even older species of vampires, even older than the standard European aristocrat vampires with the traditional weaknesses. Excuse me for stuttering. So that's the second volume. And the third volume, and the final volume I'm going to show you for this entry, is volume 3. Now this particular volume, we see the time span move forward to the very beginnings of World War II, and you follow again Pearl Jones, Skinner Sweet, and actually Pearl's husband as well, Henry Jones, as Henry is dispatched with a platoon of fellow servicemen to a mysterious island where the Japanese soldiers are trying to create a new breed of their own sort of super soldiers, if you will, and they inadvertently create a new species, of vampires on this mysterious island. And you also have a 5-issue miniseries which is written by Scott Snyder and illustrated by Sean Murphy. Sean Murphy you may know from Punk Rock Jesus. He also did a 5-issue limited series of Hellblazer called City of Demons, which is written by Cy Spencer. And Sean Murphy is also currently working again with Scott Snyder right now, again over at Vertigo, with The Wake, which is a 10-issue limited series. And in the mini-series in this volume, Survival of the Fittest, you are introduced to a platoon made up of, or entirely made up of Nazi vampires. So That's pretty cool, if you ask me. Just an absolutely fantastic series, and if you're a fan of Scott Snyder, if you're a fan of Vertigo, or if you're a fan of generally scary vampires and not, you know, pretty boy vampires, highly recommend you check out American Vampire. And that about concludes my entry. So Mahoney, I hope you enjoyed this entry to your contest, my friend. As I said, keep up the great work with all your videos. They've all been fantastic, and I definitely look forward to more. As for everybody else, thank you everybody for watching. Hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Didn't like it, thumbs it down. But as I always say for thumbs down the video, please feel free to tell me why in the comment section below. This is Scambit896 signing off, and I'll see you guys later.